This couple criticized eBay, but they definitely didn't expect that this would result in stalking, cockroaches, and somehow a pig mask.
This morning, eBay has agreed to pay nearly $56 million to a Massachusetts couple after several former eBay employees targeted and harassed them with bizarre and gruesome deliveries.
So much anguish, so much conflict.
This bloody pig Halloween mask was just one of the items that Ina and David Steiner received at their home, along with a funeral wreath and live cockroaches and spiders.
So eBay has officially agreed to pay millions of dollars to a Massachusetts couple after one of the most bizarre corporate harassment scandals I've ever read about. And I know, corporate harassment scandal sounds very boring on the surface. However, this one's not. We have quite the story here today. I mean, we have live cockroaches involved, spiders, there's a bloody pig mask, a funeral wreath, threats, people following people, and an alleged plan to put a GPS tracker in someone's car. And I mean, at one point, members of eBay's security team was apparently on the verge of breaking into this couple's garage to install that tracker. And all of this allegedly started because eBay executives did not like what two journalists were writing about their company. So the couple at the center of all this is Ina and David Steiner. They live in Natick, Massachusetts, and they run a website called E-commerce Bytes. And E-commerce Bytes is not exactly TMZ. The Steiners, they've been covering e-commerce since the late 1990s. Their site is mainly aimed at online sellers, and they report on companies like Amazon, Etsy, and now obviously eBay. Ina does a lot of the writing, and part of that job means occasionally writing things that these companies probably don't want to read about themselves, which is, called journalism. But according to federal prosecutors, some people inside eBay apparently started treating Ina Steiner less like a journalist and more like some kind of mortal enemy. So the New York Times reports that in the spring of 2019, eBay was already under pressure from an activist hedge fund. And during this period, some of Ina's reporting was seriously getting under the skin of executives at the company. One article apparently covered a bar that then CEO Devin Wenig had built on eBay's campus. And internal messages later revealed just how heated things were actually getting behind the scenes. So according to the prosecutors and the Steiners, Wenig sent a message to eBay's communications chief, Steve Weimer. And this is in August of 2019. And that said, "Take her down." Okay, what? Who is this guy? Does he think he's the Italian mob in the 70s or something like that? I don't know, but Wenig has maintained that he did not know about the harassment campaign that followed this. And his lawyers have said that messages like this were about using a public relations strategy to respond to Ina's reporting, which to me, take her down doesn't really translate to, hey, let's start a well-planned media campaign. Well, whatever floats whoever's boat, honestly. So, okay, Wenig was never criminally charged in connection to this campaign, and in a statement after the latest settlement, he said the harassment was done in secret and without my knowledge. But here's where it starts to get pretty uncomfortable, because after Wenig said take her down, then his communications chief told the head of security team to do whatever it takes. I don't know about you, but that's pretty eerie to me. And other internal communications uncovered during this case weren't really calming things nor making things too much better. So according to the reporting of the lawsuit, Weimer at one point referred to Ina as a biased troll who needs to be burned down. What? Dude, if that's what they think about some journalists, I wonder what they think about Mark Zuckerberg for pulling up and eating his lunch with Facebook Marketplace. Because it seems like these guys operate like, I don't know, 1970s Italian mob. What is this, eBay or Los Pollos Hermanos? I mean, it seems like Gustavo Fring is running the show over here. But regardless, former senior vice president of global operations, Wendy Jones, was also accused in the civil case of telling eBay's security chief to deal with the couple off the radar. Again, crazy work, crazy wording. But again, it gets worse, because just imagine being Ina Steiner during all this. You're sitting in Massachusetts writing articles about an e-commerce website. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away in Silicon Valley, senior people inside that company are allegedly talking about you like you're some final boss in a John Wick movie. And the Steiners had no idea what was about to show up on their front door. So eBay, I don't know why I almost said EA Sports right there. So eBay employees created what the former U.S. attorney from Massachusetts would later describe as a systematic campaign fueled by the resources of a Fortune 500 company to emotionally and psychologically terrorize this middle-aged couple in Natick. The Steiners started getting threatening messages online, then came the packages. Live cockroaches were sent to their home, so were spiders and fly larvae. And if you're thinking, okay, someone at eBay watched watched Fear Factor or something like that, and they just turned it into a corporate harassment strategy. Yeah, it gets a whole lot worse because they then sent a bloody Halloween pig mask, a funeral wreath, and a book on surviving the loss of a spouse. Yeah, that's an awful look. Like, I'm sorry, what? Excuse me? Sending someone a funeral wreath, that's creepy enough, but sending a married couple a book about how to cope after one of them dies, that's not a subtle message whatsoever, and that's coming from a Fortune 500 company? Really? And the campaign didn't stay online or in the mail because members of the eBay team actually traveled across the country from California to Natick, Massachusetts, and they surveilled the Steiners in person, and they followed them around, and they wanted to put a GPS tracker on the couple's car. And at a certain point, it really does look like an actual plot and not just some sort of like crazy scare campaign. Just saying, this does not look good whatsoever. Apparently the security team got to a point where they were on the verge of breaking into the Steiners' garage so they could secretly install the tracker. Just think about how insane this escalation really is. This started with executives being mad about some articles online, and suddenly we have now arrived at people traveling roughly 3,000 miles across the country and preparing to break into a journalist's garage over some articles online. And this is a Fortune 500 company. My fevered body can barely comprehend this. This is insane, which is why I'm sitting inside with a jacket on, even though that it's like 75 in my room now. I'm sure I'll get better soon, but back to the video. Because there was even more happening. The group were posting fake Craigslist ads using the Steiners' home address. I do like that eBay was using Craigslist for something here. Cool. They also allegedly sent explicit magazines to the Steiners' neighbors. There was apparently an entire plan behind the chaos. The harassment was supposed to make the Steiners feel threatened and overwhelmed. Then, according to the criminal case, members of the team planned to have eBay step in and offer to help Ina solve the harassment. Dude. What? Would that not be a little bit suspicious? Suddenly your life is just in full chaos after you made some articles on eBay, and then they're like, hey, we can help you. And then suddenly your problems go away. Honestly, this is some like Nathan for You level stuff. The plan, create the problem, terrify the victim, and then allegedly show up pretending to be the good guy. What could go wrong? Nah, that's giving eBay too much credit. Nathan's plan would actually be better. I'm still just kind of stuck here dumbfounded. Data. The Fortune 500 company eBay did this. The website you go to because you need a replacement remote from a television they stopped selling in 2009 did this. So, I mean, luckily, the Steiners, they realized this wasn't just some random internet harassment. Something much bigger was happening, so they contacted attorneys while the campaign was still going under, and those attorneys actually helped them get the Natick police involved. And eventually the FBI became involved as well. And this is where the whole thing started to unravel, because once those investigators started figuring out who was behind it, it stopped being this bizarre mystery involving, you know, cockroaches and pig masks. It became a federal criminal case. And once federal investigators started pulling the thread, they found that this wasn't just like some rogue employee doing something stupid on company time. No, 7 people connected to eBay were eventually criminally charged, and they included members of the company's security team and a former eBay contractor. And all 7 of them ultimately pleaded guilty for their roles. And one of the biggest names was James Baugh, eBay's former senior director of safety and security. Basically, the guy's job involved keeping people safe was now accused of helping run a campaign designed to terrify 2 journalists. You hear something new every day, you really do. But Baugh eventually pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 57 months in federal prison, nearly 5 years. Other people involved, they received prison sentences or home confinement. But there was one part of the story that continued to bother the Steiners, the executives, because while members of the security team, they were prosecuted, the Steiners believed the people higher up the corporate ladder had helped set everything in motion. So the New York Times points specifically to those internal messages. Take her down, whatever it takes. Those aren't really good messages to have or to send as an executive. What do I know though? They weren't charged, so I guess they were just silly little messages. The former CEO, Devin Wenig, has repeatedly denied knowing about the harassment campaign. I feel like a big question here is what responsibility does an executive have when their words travel down a chain of command and something actually happens on the other end? I mean, if this was a criminal organization, they would get taken down, but This is eBay, big dog eBay over here. Obviously, those weren't orders. They were just reading a dictionary and leaving out a whole bunch of words. But Ina Steiner told the New York Times corporations have armies of security people and they can be weaponized. I mean, just looking at the harassment they received, it seems like that might be the case. Like, this whole situation is so crazy because on one side you have a married couple running a trade publication out of their home in Massachusetts, and then on the other hand you have eBay, a $50 billion company. So essentially just a megacorp with money, lawyers, security personnel, and resources that two independent journalists could have never came close to matching. And eventually, the federal government went after the company as well. So in 2024, the Justice Department criminally charged eBay with offenses including stalking, witness tampering, and obstruction of justice. And the case was ultimately resolved through a deferred prosecution agreement. eBay agreed to pay the maximum available criminal fine of $3 million and undertake corrective measures. Then there was a civil case, because the Steiners also sued eBay, the former executives, and the other employees back in 2021. And through this lawsuit, they gained access to roughly 68,000 internal documents, which gave them something they really wanted from the beginning: answers. Because imagine going through all this and not really fully understanding why it all happened. And for years, the Steiners kept pushing to find out. And they actually came really close to taking this whole thing to trial. But an initial settlement was reached last winter, right before the case was supposed to go before a jury. And then that deal apparently fell apart. So the Steiners actually asked the court to put the case back on the trial calendar. So a new trial date was eventually scheduled for January 2027. A trial potentially would have put years of internal communications, testimony, and evidence in front of a jury while asking one of the biggest questions hanging over the entire case: how much responsibility should the people at the top have for what happened at the bottom? But that trial is no longer happening because on July 27th, the Steiners announced that they had reached another settlement, and this one stuck. The total value of this was $55.7 million. And of that, the Steiners will receive $48.7 million directly. eBay is paying $46.15 million. Former CEO David Wenig is paying $2 million, and former Senior Vice President Wendy Jones is paying $500,000, and former Communications Chief Steve Weimer is paying $50,000. But it does actually get a little bit better because eBay also agreed to fund another $6 million in charitable contributions to nonprofit organizations, and Wenig will separately donate $1 million to a charity dedicated to protecting First Amendment rights in Ina Steiner's name. And there is one detail that I thought was pretty cool because there is apparently no confidentiality provision, so the Steiners are allowed to talk about what happened. So Ina told the Associated Press, "David and I were on the same page that the settlement should and must be made public as victims who want to prevent something like this from ever happening to anyone else, and as reporters who believe in transparency." I mean, that is just awesome. And it also makes perfect sense considering this entire nightmare started because people wanted them to stop reporting. Like, imagine surviving all that and then ending the case by signing an agreement saying, okay, now we can't talk about it. No, it makes sense they would push for that. And there was also another unusual requirement because according to their attorneys, eBay agreed to issue a strongly worded public statement concerning Wenig, Weimer, and Jones and the company's culture in 2019. So what did eBay actually say? Well, they said the 2019 conduct is not representative of eBay's culture or thousands of employees around the world today. Well, I guess they said something. eBay since then has also said that it brought in new leadership and strengthened its policies, procedures, controls, and training. And when the New York Times asked about the strongly worded statement involving former executives, an eBay spokesperson pointed to the language saying the unprofessional tone and internal communications demonstrated to the different degrees and number by Mr. Wenig, Mr. Weimer, and Miss Jones. And I am sorry. I guess unprofessional tone is really doing some heavy lifting there, but one could say forgetting best regards at the bottom of the email. That could be an unprofessional tone, but I don't know. I guess next time a mega corporation says that someone needs to be burned down, nothing to worry about, just some unprofessional tonality going on. Regardless, though, I mean, these are just the things that you kind of read and go, how did this happen? Why did this happen? Well, the Steiners have spent years trying to make sure that people don't just like remember this as the weird eBay story with the pig mask. No, they wanted people to know how it happened. And they wanted other journalists to be able to write and make content around other powerful companies without wondering whether the company that they might be covering could or maybe would use its money and resources to come after them. And in this case, whatever happened inside eBay ultimately ended with 7 people pleading guilty, a $3 million criminal fine for the company, years of litigation, and now a settlement worth nearly $56 million. Bravo. David Steiner ended up also saying, I look forward to having, with whatever time I have left on this planet, fun with life, doing things that we enjoy to do. And hopefully that involves never opening another package containing a cockroach for the rest of his life. So that was the story how eBay decided to stalk some journalists one day. If you're interested in another deep dive, you can check out this video right here. And if you're new here, feel free to subscribe, drop a like if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.